Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent. And what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
They called him untouchable. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs wasn't just a music mogul. He was the architect of hip-hop royalty, a master of reinvention, and the face behind some of the biggest cultural movements of the 2000s. From platinum albums to luxury vodka deals, he turned the art of branding into a billion-dollar blueprint. But today, that empire is crumbling. And not because of the media, not because of a rival label, but because of something far more personal. Federal investigators are circling, sealed court documents are being cracked open, and at the heart of it all stands a name no one expected: Christian Combs, Diddy's own son. Behind closed doors, prosecutors claim they've been speaking to Christian, allegedly not once but twice, and believe he holds keys to secret party guest lists, encrypted transactions, and financial records tied to what they now say was more than just entertainment. This isn't just another celebrity scandal, it's a legal ticking time bomb, and if what insiders say is true, Christian's testimony could become the ultimate betrayal in a saga already bursting with deception, power, and hidden agendas. So how did one of the most iconic names in music find himself locked behind bars, with whispers of his own blood turning against him? Stay locked in, because what happens next could blow the lid off one of the biggest stories in music history, and it's only just getting started. For years, Diddy wasn't just present in the industry, he was the industry. From launching Bad Boy Records and mentoring icons like Biggie Smalls to revolutionizing the business side of hip-hop, he built an image that blended swagger with strategy.
Mr. Combs feels A, he's innocent, which is why he's not going to plead guilty. B, he's going to be truthful about this case because he wants to portray that to the people who have loved him his whole life. And I think he also feels an obligation to people in general. Maybe it's black people, maybe it's white people, maybe it's anybody who's ever felt aggrieved and targeted by the government. He feels an obligation to those people to say, you know what, maybe I can break the model.
His summer parties were the stuff of legend, lavish invite-only events where artists, actors, athletes, and billionaires mingled behind mansion gates under the glow of champagne-fueled exclusivity. But while the music played and the cameras flashed, something else was allegedly happening beneath the surface. Prosecutors now claim those high-profile gatherings weren't just extravagant, they were operational hubs. According to sealed indictments and leaked memos, what looked like harmless celebrity indulgence may have masked a far darker pattern, one involving shell companies, hush money, and covert movement of people across state lines under the guise of entertainment. The federal raid on Diddy's LA and Miami estates didn't just confiscate laptops and ledgers. They exposed what investigators now say is a layered criminal enterprise that spanned nearly a decade. What's more chilling, the feds aren't working off hearsay. They have names, they have bank transfers, they have encrypted chats, and many of those conversations allegedly happened between Diddy and people closest to him. Family, employees, inner circle confidants. That's where Christian comes in, because when the feds zeroed in on private jets, exclusive party rosters, and last-minute six-figure payments from obscure LLCs, a new narrative emerged, one that no longer paints Diddy as just a businessman, but potentially as the architect of something far more orchestrated. And with Christian's name appearing in financial records and logistics reports, the walls may not just be closing in, they might already be collapsing. When the first charges were quietly filed, many assumed it was just another civil suit targeting a wealthy celebrity. But what followed shattered that illusion. In a 47-page indictment, federal prosecutors laid out a chilling blueprint of what they allege was a coordinated operation.
Sean Diddy Combs is facing another long list of sexual misconduct allegations. He's in jail awaiting trials on charges of trafficking women for sex parties. He's pleaded not guilty. An attorney in Houston says he represents 120 people who say Combs abused them as well.
stretching from 2015 to 2023, one that used private jets, shell corporations, and luxury properties to facilitate something far more sinister than lavish entertainment. At the core of the accusations is the claim that Diddy, and a tightly controlled inner circle, transported individuals across state lines under false pretenses, masking what prosecutors referred to as non-consensual arrangements behind the glamour of industry events. Homeland Security agents say they recovered encrypted messages referencing pairings, recruitments, and hush-hush cash drops that coincided with parties hosted in the Hamptons, Miami, and even international locations. But what pushed the case into explosive territory wasn't just the logistics, it was the evidence pointing to direct intent. According to prosecutors, digital forensics linked burner phones, email aliases, and financial transfers from Bad Boy Entertainment subsidiaries to yacht rentals, gated luxury homes, and late-night transport services, all allegedly tied to the same series of events. One message, allegedly sent just hours before a now infamous White Sands weekend, instructed an unnamed associate to wipe the guest log and burn the backups. Another detailed a list of VIP attendees alongside corresponding wire transfers from shell accounts based in the British Virgin Islands.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
And then came the turning point. Documents showing 2 of those invoices bore the digital signature of Christian Combs. Whether he knew what he was authorizing remains unclear, but for prosecutors, that was enough to request sealed testimony and consider him a key witness. It's not just about proving illegal activity anymore, it's about proving who knew what and when. And with over 70 civil cases echoing similar claims, the explosive nature of these accusations lies in their pattern. Because if what's alleged is true, this wasn't an isolated lapse in judgment, it was a machine, one that operated in plain sight under the mask of fame, luxury, and the illusion of consent. Christian Combs, known to fans as King Combs, was supposed to be the heir to a music legacy, not the center of a federal investigation. Raised in the spotlight and groomed to carry the bad boy torch, Christian was more than just Diddy's son. He was positioned as his protege, brand ambassador, and even business partner in key ventures. But now, with his name surfacing in sealed memos and linked directly to financial records and party logistics, the story has flipped, and Christian may be standing at a dangerous crossroads. Prosecutors believe he holds first-hand knowledge of the inner workings of his father's empire, not just from a public relations standpoint, but from behind the scenes, where jet manifests were created, hush payments allegedly authorized, and guest lists finalized. 2 high-level law enforcement insiders confirmed that Christian has already met with federal prosecutors at least twice in April, accompanied by his own legal counsel. While no formal cooperation deal has been announced, court files include a sealed memo detailing expected testimony from a family member.
Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
Widely believed to be Christian. The emotional weight of that possibility is staggering. A son potentially testifying against his father in one of the most high-profile celebrity cases in decades. And what's more, prosecutors say Christian's role wasn't passive. Encrypted messages retrieved during raids reportedly show him coordinating with Diddy's event teams, authorizing payments, and even managing logistics for high-profile guests. One digital invoice listed him as the internal approver for yacht catering expenses tied to a party now flagged as central to the STNR charges. Insiders suggest that Christian's quiet cooperation may be a strategic move to protect himself from being swept up in future charges. But that doesn't make it any less controversial. Within the entertainment industry and black cultural circles, the reactions are split. Some see him as a necessary truth teller stepping forward, others view it as a betrayal of family and legacy. Either way, Christian isn't just part of the background anymore. His potential testimony could make or break the prosecution's entire case, and the very fact that it's his own father on trial makes the emotional stakes unlike anything we've seen before. Follow the money. They always say that's where the truth lives. And in this case, prosecutors believe they've uncovered a financial trail so complex, so meticulously hidden, it took forensic analysts weeks just to untangle the first layer.
The allegations are disturbing.
Our youngest victim at the time of the occurrence was 9 years old.
We have an individual who was 14 years old. We have one who was 15.
At the heart of the government's argument lies an alleged $74 million funneled through 17 different shell companies between 2016 and 2023, companies with no employees, no physical offices, and in some cases, no public presence at all. These entities, registered in business havens like Delaware, Nevada, and the British Virgin Islands, acted as financial pass-throughs, quietly dispersing funds for private jet charters, waterfront estate rentals, yacht excursions, and luxury security details tied to Diddy's exclusive events. But here's the twist. According to newly unsealed court records, at least 2 invoices related to those high-end services were signed off by Christian Combs. That's right, Diddy's own son appears on paper as the authorizer of costs directly tied to events now flagged by the government as operational centers in what they're calling a criminal conspiracy. The documents include receipts for catering, DJ bookings, and late-night transport, expenses that seem innocent until you realize they coincide exactly with the dates of alleged recruitment and illicit transport activities now under investigation. And it doesn't end there. Prosecutors claim matching withdrawals from personal accounts followed soon after some of Diddy's most publicized charitable donations, suggesting a tactic known in financial circles as circular financing, where public generosity masks internal asset reshuffling. Investigators believe this method was used not only to avoid scrutiny, but to maintain the illusion of legitimate philanthropy while reinforcing control over the financial web. A $900,000 transfer from a tequila marketing fund to a dormant media company also raised red flags after it was allegedly used to pay for a private jet charter tied to the now infamous White Sands weekend. That jet, they say, flew 8 unidentified passengers to a remote estate in the Bahamas, an event now under heavy forensic review. As this trail unfolds, what started as flashy business moves now looks more like the bones of an empire built to conceal, redirect, and protect. And with every new ledger line exposed, the prosecution's case gets less about speculation and more about signatures, receipts, and undeniable patterns.
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
When news broke that Christian Combs might be cooperating with federal prosecutors, it wasn't just a legal bombshell, it was a cultural earthquake. In the world of black entertainment, where loyalty and legacy often outweigh law and order, the idea of a son potentially testifying against his father, especially a father as iconic as Diddy, sent shockwaves through every corner of the industry. Social media lit up with polarized reactions. Hashtags like #ProtectKingCombs and #BlackWallOfSilence trended for days, capturing a generational divide that's been brewing beneath the surface for years. On one side, older industry veterans called for unity, urging people not to rush to judgment, reminding the world that Diddy helped shape a sound, a style, and an era. On the other, younger voices argued that silence in the face of wrongdoing only preserves power structures built on abuse and manipulation. Some saw Christian's possible cooperation as bravery, choosing truth over blood ties. Others saw betrayal, but the cultural fallout didn't stop with online discourse. Brand partners began pulling back, liquor distributors paused shipments of De Leon tequila, pending trial developments. Streaming platforms saw massive spikes in Bad Boy Records' back catalog, part curiosity, part nostalgia, part farewell tour. And quietly, major artists began distancing themselves. Usher's reps denied any involvement. Mary J. Blige's team refused to comment. Even longtime allies like Revolt TV made it clear they had no ties to the shell companies under investigation. Behind closed doors, executives were holding emergency meetings to assess reputational risk. The empire that once stood as a symbol of black success, black ownership, and cultural dominance now faced a much darker question.
What came out of today's hearing? Number one, the government acknowledged that they offered Combs a plea deal. Combs acknowledged he has no interest in taking that. They're going to move forward with the trial. They also talked about the jury selection process, which one legal expert I spoke to said is probably the most important thing that you want to pay close attention to before the actual trial starts.
At what cost did that success come? And what happens when the same community that celebrated your rise is forced to reckon with your fall? Cultural commentator Marciana Morgan didn't mince words. She called it a generational reckoning, the kind that forces tough questions about power, accountability, and legacy. Because for decades, Diddy represented the dream. Now he's become a cautionary tale, and the fact that this reckoning is unfolding publicly, with his own son at the center, makes it impossible to ignore. This isn't just about a trial, it's about what happens when the culture that built you starts to wonder if it ever really knew you at all. This case isn't just a criminal trial, it's a high-stakes chessboard where every move could reshape the outcome, and both sides know the smallest misstep could tip the balance. After rejecting a plea deal that would have capped his sentence at 12 years, Diddy made it clear he's not backing down, not admitting guilt, and not letting prosecutors paint him as a mastermind without a fight. But that decision came with serious risk, because now the full weight of the federal government is aimed directly at him, and they're not holding back. Prosecutors have already hinted that they may lead their entire case with Christian Combs on the stand, a move legal analysts call aggressive and deeply strategic. Why? Because putting a close family member in front of the jury early can lock in emotional credibility and reinforce the narrative before the defense even gets to respond. It's a psychological play, not just a legal one. Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team is striking back on every front. Lead attorney Aaron Sussman has filed motions to suppress parts of Christian's expected testimony, arguing that family conversations were private and legally protected.
On September 16, 2024, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs was arrested in New York City and charged with racketeering, trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in relations for money. Prosecutors allege Diddy ran a criminal enterprise involving forced labor, kidnapping, and bribery.
He's also attacking the credibility of other potential witnesses, pointing out that many of them are also plaintiffs in pending civil suits, implying they're more interested in payouts than truth. On the surface, it sounds like standard legal warfare, but dig deeper and the strategies become clear. The prosecution wants to build a story of intent, using digital records, financial transactions, and personal testimony to prove this wasn't accidental. It was organized. The defense, on the other hand, wants to shatter that narrative by suggesting what happened behind closed doors involved consenting adults and private lifestyle choices, not criminal activity. They're calling it a government overreach, a morality play dressed up as a federal indictment, and jury selection? That's a battlefield of its own. Every potential juror is being vetted with a 24-page questionnaire, probing their views on celebrity culture, conspiracy charges, and whether they've ever watched a Bad Boy music video. Both sides know perception is power, and shaping the jury's mindset before opening statements begin is just as important as the evidence itself. Because in a trial like this, where the lines between fame, family, and felonies are constantly shifting, the real game isn't just about proving facts. It's about controlling the story, and in this chess match, the next move could change everything. As jury selection wraps and opening arguments draw near, the entire case teeters on the edge of something unprecedented, not just for Diddy, but for the celebrity world at large. If Christian Combs takes the stand during the first week, as insiders expect, it could fast-track the prosecution's timeline, giving them a head start in connecting the dots between money, movement, and motive. But that also means placing family loyalty under the harshest light possible, and any misstep, any contradiction, any hesitation could backfire for both sides. Legal experts are already saying this may become the defining celebrity trial of the decade, not just for its scale, but for what it represents.
Where we hanging out and what we doing, we can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. He signed to Usher. Signed to Usher. I had legal guardianship of Usher when you know he did his first album. I did Usher's first album.
The collapsing of an empire built on image, secrecy, and influence, and the ripple effects are already spreading. Record labels are reassessing their affiliations, sponsors are backing out, and streaming services are bracing for potential PR disasters tied to decades-old partnerships. Meanwhile, fans are left watching an icon unravel in real time. Diddy, once celebrated for his hustle, his music, his cultural impact, is now confined to a cell at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. No bail, no house arrest, just isolation while his team fights to overturn the judge's ruling. His lawyers cite health concerns and family obligations in their new bail request, but prosecutors aren't budging, arguing that his global connections and vast resources make him a flight risk. Behind the scenes, court officials are finalizing witness lists, reviewing digital forensic reports, and preparing for what could be a multi-week spectacle packed with surprise testimonies, expert analysis, and maybe even more sealed documents being unsealed. And then there's the wild card, whether other family members like Justin Combs or Quincy Brown will be called in or choose to speak voluntarily. The prosecution is clearly playing the long game, hinting they're prepared to go deeper if needed. Meanwhile, Diddy's defense is digging in for an all-out war, calling in sociologists to explain away industry norms, framing the government's approach as racially biased overreach. In a few short days, this case will move from speculation to courtroom fact, and from that moment on, everything changes. Reputations will be made or destroyed. Legacies will either be defended or buried, and for millions watching, it will raise one unavoidable question. What do we do when the people who once inspired us become the ones we fear were hiding something all along?
At the center of it all are so-called freak-offs, orchestrated erotic activities where Diddy allegedly directed men and women in X-rated performances. Many were said to be unknowingly filmed and blackmailed. Purportedly, victims, some underage, were controlled using threats, violence, narcotics, and money. Raids on Diddy's homes uncovered videos, firearms, and curiously, over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant.
In the end, this case isn't just about whether Diddy walks free or serves time. It's about the illusion of power, the fragility of image, and how quickly a legacy built over decades can unravel in a matter of weeks. It's about a son standing at the edge of loyalty and self-preservation, deciding whether blood is thicker than truth. It's about whether money, fame, and influence can still shield someone from accountability in a time when even the most private moments can become public evidence. As prosecutors prepare to lay out their case and the defense gears up to dismantle every charge, the world is watching not just for a verdict, but for a signal of whether the justice system can hold cultural giants to the same standard as everyone else, a signal of whether family ties can survive the weight of public betrayal, and a signal of how far the industry is willing to go to protect its own. If Christian Combs does take the stand, it will mark a moment few thought possible, where the spotlight that once built an empire turns inward, exposing every shadow it tried to hide. And no matter how this ends, the ripple effect won't stop at the courtroom doors. It will reshape careers, shift public narratives, and possibly spark new investigations into the systems that allowed all of this to go unchecked for so long. So ask yourself, how much of what we celebrate is built on silence, and what happens when that silence finally breaks? If you've stayed with us this far, you already know this story is far from over. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who still thinks fame equals immunity, because what's coming next might just rewrite the rules of celebrity accountability forever. And trust us, you won't want to miss it.